what is embodied in the American-Turkish relationship are two incredibly important countries that have mutual interests in so many different parts of the world. And when you think of whether you're speaking of Iraq or Afghanistan, of the broader Middle East, whether you're talking about energy or the Caucasus, whether you're talking about engagement with Armenia, whether you're talking about Azerbaijan, whether you're talking about essentially every issue that has a national security impact here in the United States, Turkey plays a potentially crucial role. And while our two countries don't necessarily see eye to eye on every issue, that's not the point. The point is that American and Turkish soldiers have in fact fought together in most of the conflicts of the 20th century, that Turkey headed up the ISAF forces 2 or 3 times. They now head up the force that protects Kabul in Afghanistan. The Turkish participation in the economic recovery of Iraq, which ultimately will guide, hopefully, Iraq to a prosperous future, is of enormous proportion. Turkey still is and will remain a crucial member of NATO. But most importantly, and I'm going off the usual script at this point, but where there is controversy, and Lord knows several of my last trips to Turkey have been centered on controversy. The truth is, though, that in my opinion, Turkey lives in a very difficult neighborhood. And it's easy sometimes to criticize when your neighbors are Canada and Mexico, as opposed to Syria and Iraq and Iran and some other serious situations in the near vicinity. And Turkey has embarked on a foreign policy of no problems with its neighbors, of engaging in a very serious fashion in its regional approach. And while they do that, I would respectfully suggest that America gains when Turkey becomes more prominent in the region. America gains when Turkey exercises more strength in the region. Doesn't mean we have to agree with every tactic or every particular move that the Turkish government makes. But at the end of the game, if Syria were to become more like Turkey, we win. If Iran were to become closer to Turkey and take some of its direction from Turkish leadership, we win. And if we also look at it from the perspective of political risk, I would argue that the President of the United States on a whole host of issues is taking political risk. There are a few leaders in the world who today I would argue are taking political risk. And I don't agree with Prime Minister Erdogan on all issues, that's for sure. But he is one of those leaders in the world today that in fact is taking a considerable amount of political risk. The engagement with Armenia requires enormous political capital and political risk. The democratization program, and Lord knows there are people in this room that know it better than I, but to open up that kind of a program with the Kurdish minority and with others takes a great deal of political risk. And if you simply look at the translation of the Turkish newspapers every so often, which many of you don't have to look at the translation, but the degree of criticism that he receives and the government receives from the opposition, I think is an indicator of the degree of political risk that he's taking, whether he's right, whether he's wrong, whether you agree or whether he disagrees. And for that, I believe we should be thankful in America for this one reason. Turkey is no longer an emerging democracy. It is a full-fledged democracy. Doesn't mean it's perfect, just like America is not perfect, but it's a full-fledged democracy. The Turkish people get to vote. They do so in fair elections. They choose their leaders, and the region is much stronger as a result of it. Anyway, this has been a labor of love for me, watching the support in the Turkish-American community be garnered as it is. If I may say so, I happen to think Lincoln McCurdy is a visionary in a lot of ways, and he deserves an enormous amount of credit. And that's not to say that he has not had partners and people that have had as big an impact. I don't mean to suggest that. But it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, Lincoln and I had a conversation, and his purpose was to engage the Turkish American community because he felt that the skill and the knowledge and the prosperity and the passion of the Turkish American community, while it was being directed at the professions and being directed at business, it was not being directed at politics, and that the maturity of the Turkish American community for it to truly evolve in America had to also engage in politics. And he began, I think, a somewhat lonely journey, and it's taken him all across the country, from coast to coast. I've seen it in California. I've seen it, obviously, all over the East Coast of the United States. And he, along with many others. But I think it would be fair to say that Lincoln was the initiator of something very, very special in the Turkish American community, and will make America and our political system that much more richer for it. Last thing, this gentleman to my right is, I think from those of you who know him, this is nothing new, but for those that met him this evening, he is a remarkably thoughtful, I believe gracious, and dignified member of Congress. He comes from a district, I'm going to be a bit presumptuous, but he comes from a district which will allow him to engage in foreign policy in a way that he will become very quickly a remarkably influential member of Congress on foreign policy issues. He has shown a degree of personal passion regarding Turkey that few members of Congress ever show. He is destined, I think, to be a very prominent Democrat in what I hope will be a Democratic majority for many, many years. His future is unlimited. You all, I think, are quite lucky because you get to participate at the beginning of a political career where the impact that you can make is significantly greater than you might be able to make if this was 6 years from now or 8 years from now. Congressman McMahon will remember forever the support that he received from the Turkish American community in his first year, in his first re-election, which will most likely be his most difficult, because when he in fact does get re-elected next November and he wins with a very healthy margin, no one in their right mind will then run against him of any consequential significance. And you should follow his career. You should give him input as to the status of Turkish-American relations. But this is a very capable gentleman with a great deal of experience, but at the same time new enough to be idealistic enough. And there's a large crop of new members of Congress. And Congressman McMahon is a leader among that newest group. And it's a great privilege for me to be here in support of him, but arguably even a greater opportunity for the Turkish American community to take him in as a true friend, guide him, support him, help him. It will be a mutually beneficial relationship, I can assure you, and there's no one more worthy than Michael of receiving your attention. Thank you again for your attention.
As we all know, behind every successful congressman and congresswoman, it's the staff. And if I may ask that Robert's staff please come up, Josh, Jonathan, Mariana, because these are friends. Wonderful people, and this is our last opportunity to be with you as part of Congressman Robert Wexler's staff. We wish you well in your other careers as you develop them. But again, thank you so very much. This is a major turning point in Turkish American political activism, and it's going to be even better. So thank you for coming.